The soul of the mother took the decision to experience the grief over the death of her child in its entirety. His brother was gone. The souls don't know what is good and what is bad. I had reached my limit of grief. Autism, and moreover a severe level of autism. In a year, he had simply cancelled this diagnosis, let the miracle in. Hello. Can you imagine what the parents of autistic children go through when you have given up on joy, when you don't want to open your eyes in the morning and to wake up in this terrifying reality, when every day is similar to another, when it is impossible to touch your child and the child doesn't perceive you as family? Watch our interview with the mom who managed to overcome all of this. Hello, Tatiana. My name is Irina. Today I want to talk with you about your son, about your story. Well, my story begins, so to say, with sadness. At the same time, I have learned that I was pregnant and that my eldest son had been diagnosed with brain tumor. I simply don't remember how Igor was developing during the first 3 years. When Igor was 1 year old, his brother was gone. The soul of the mother took the decision to experience the grief over the death of her child in its entirety. To live through the pain you feel when you lose your child. To live through the fear and pain when you are trying to save your child. To live through this intensity of emotions, terror, fright, pain. All of these through the life experience, without realizing all the depths of this pain. The souls don't know what is good and what is bad. They always play, and they play according to their interest. The soul is always guided by the interest. According to my husband's words, I know that Igor had already known a couple of words by the age of 1. His physical development was normal. He learned to walk when he was 13 months old. We got all the vaccinations according to the plan. But what I want to say is that my child had stimming, except I just didn't notice this, because that period of time for me, it was like amnesia. I don't remember it. I used to live with such a feeling, I had such an idea in my mind that I had reached my limit of grief, that shells never hit the same place twice, that everything was going to be all right with me and also with my children. I was looking for a quiet normal life, a kind of Groundhog Day, so I could know what I would be doing on this day in 3 weeks. So that was how I used to live. I simply didn't notice his steaming. The first shot across the bow was during visiting our friends when I heard the phrase, "Your child spent the whole evening without dropping a single sound, not even a word, a sound." I woke up, took my child and rushed to a doctor. And the doctor said an ordinary phrase, "The mother, don't worry, you have a boy. Boys usually begin speaking later." They looked through his medical card, his physical well-being was all right, his mother didn't have complaints, his mother didn't notice his steaming. So I came back home. Approximately in a month, I met my acquaintance. She was a speech therapist. It didn't take much time for the trained eye to see Igor's problem. Right off, she brought up the topic of autism. She told me about the science of autism, and this finally brought me down to the earth. Helped me to gather my wits. I came home and began to Google. And the very first thing I came across was ATC test. And no matter how hard I tried to find the answers while passing the test, the verdict was the same. Autism, and moreover, a severe level of autism. Those mothers who are familiar with the matter will understand what a severe level of autism means. It means that the child had a whole bunch of signs. That was the classical bunch of all the symptoms, ranging from that he didn't respond to his name, followed the same routes, and that he didn't like to touch him. It was absolutely impossible to touch his head. That means his sensory motor functions were also involved. So I was trying to find what to do in this internet. Our traditional medicine I rejected at once. I didn't like their statement that autism is incurable. As I had a mind program, everything should be fine. And maybe in some way it turned to be useful for me. I found one woman who was treating according to the Tintorium method. And I am really grateful to this woman because she had a course of psychological help for the parents. And she brought me in this totally new world for me, as I called it, the neuropsychology. That are the psychologists who really talk about the soul. I remember that at the time I read Richard Bach, his Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and I absorbed it so well, as the saying is, it was the shape of my heart. I began to change myself, but my child didn't change. So at that seagull, I came back to my flight. This is the correct approach, that a parent should change to help his child to recover. But it is important to understand that to switch this process on, it is important to turn the child's consciousness on, to kickstart the conscious mechanism. When it works, the child is able to keep track of the parent's changes, and step by step, the system begins to work. The system of getting out of autism. If the child consciousness doesn't work, then the parents' changes, the parents exert themselves in vain. I started to practice Lazarov's technique. I was forgiven. I really asked people for forgiveness. But now I realize that I was doing this from the superiority position. But this is not the point. My child didn't change anyway. However, he gained some new skills, abilities, everything we can call he had learned to do. But there was no comprehension. He learned how to put on his sneakers, how to drink from a cup, how to turn the key in the keyhole. He learned how to dress himself. He learned how to use the toilet, but he had no understanding of the world around him at all. He couldn't understand where he was, what was he doing. Parents have to train their children, to teach them some behavioral reactions, to repeat some movements, but this doesn't turn the child's consciousness on. To turn the consciousness on, it is necessary to work with some deeper levels of the psyche. Besides, I used a lot of other methods. There was a craniosacral therapist, Tomatis method, high-frequency therapy. Yes, my child began to talk. I was in seventh heaven. My son was talking. But it was such monotonous, emotionless speech, automatic. He used to come up to me and say, juice. I said to him, Igor, say it correctly. He said, tell mom give juice. He couldn't even understand that the word tell is inappropriate to use here. He could come up to me and call me dad. Yes, he was able to understand speech, or it is better to say he boned up. He learned at a simple level what the verbs give, take, put on means. His comprehension didn't have any further progress, but ATC test showed 40 points. I'm sure that every mother who follows this way, together with her child, comes up to such point when she gives up on joy. When you wake up in the morning and you don't want to open your eyes because you understand that you are walking up to this reality. That is, you understand that this day will be similar to the previous and the next day will be the same as this one. In fact, this is a Groundhog Day. I have received what I wanted. So, at one of such moments, I've made a deal with the God, with the one who is there in heaven. I told him, okay, if I'm so sinful, then take me right to the pit of hell. But before, this you will heal my son, that he will live a normal life, he won't be a burden to anyone, he will live independently. And I lived for about 2 months with this contract, and then an interesting event happened. I broke the mirror. Furthermore, I broke it on a banner day on the 6th of January. And it was the same when I had broken it the day before I learned about my elder son diagnosis. So the trigger activated. I was grieving for 3 or 4 days, then some noble rage boiled inside me. And I talked to the God again. I said, well, if you don't want to help me, I break our deal. I'm going to heal myself by myself without you, and I'm going to live a long, happy life, and everything is going to be great. Breathe in, breathe out, as Natalia says, and moved on. And then I received the information about one more guru. In fact, he was also talking about the right things, but he was expressing himself so wildly that I think he didn't understand himself. But I was reading him. It seemed to me that I began to understand what he was talking about. He came to us and lived here for a week. And right after he went away, my friend from the land of pyramids sent me Natalia's video over the internet. And she said a catchphrase, "Please watch it. Your opinion is important for me." My sense of agency blossomed out, of course, as my opinion was important. I did such great work. I made a comparison study. I compared Natalia's information with that guru's information, and of course, for the benefit of guru. So I carried out a research. My friend listened to me, thanked me, and we said goodbye to each other. But I didn't say goodbye to Natalia. I continued to watch her videos every day. In 2 weeks, I think I watched all her videos. And I called my friend again and I said, I don't know, but something resonates with me. And she said that she had already made payment and she gave me the site. Then, I don't know how to say that, but I had a feeling that I was late for the train. And if I didn't get into the last car, I would take away my child's last chance. And I took action. I wrote a bunch of messages, I made calls, I left, I think, 2 applications, and in 2 hours Natalia responded to me. She described the reasons of autism and how much would it cost. And now I think I understand now that my soul was guiding me at that moment. My mind was somewhere far away, kept silence for the first time in my life. At that moment, that sum of money, actually it was the last sum of money left in our family, because we spent all the money for Guru. My husband was absent, he was abroad and he was going to come only in a week, but I was totally in comfort with this. I didn't care how I would live this week, as I had been in the bonnet to catch the last train. So the next morning I sent the money, and at 5 p.m. Natalia sent me the video working through. To say that I was surprised? We all dream that we used to be queens or princesses in our past lives. Okay then, so I sent this video to my husband and said, you watched it, you pronounce everything that should be pronounced, and only after this you call me back and ask your questions. I must give credit to my husband. He did everything right. And I observe now that all these 3 years he was withstanding all my hang-ups, all my wavering, and besides, he provided the financial basis for us. When a person hears that he has to repeat something to complete some ritual, immediately has some magical associations and usually some fears. It is both simple and complicated at the same time. We reach precisely the karmic story. It is very important to receive the precise information, and we get the information about the decision the soul had taken at that moment in the past lives. There is the resource around that decision, the resource energetically fits the story in this life, the disease in this life. So this resource should be taken away, the decision should be cancelled, the information should be reached. So that is what we do when we do working through. This is one of the stages of working through. And in 4 days, the miracles began to happen. My son used to have stimming since he was 2. He used to have a lot of kinds of stimming, but this stimming was growing exponentially. It was his obsession with doors, no matter what kind, mechanical, electronic, sliding. He could open and close them for hours. When we went for a walk, we never went to the playground, and there were no doors, and he was not interested. We were walking along the streets holding hands, and if he managed to slip his hand, he wouldn't leave until an angry security guard would come out and rent him off the door. So once again, we went for a walk after the working through. I held him by the hand, and Igor didn't try to slip his hand. I relaxed my grip. He was calmly passing by, pointed his finger at the door, laughed and said, "Miss it, my words." And then my friend phoned me and I said, "Can you imagine, Igor doesn't rush to the doors," and she said, "There now, it works. You know, we were like the earliest explorers, we knew nothing. We didn't understand what it was. I think that it is true that our souls guided us, our brain was turned off because it would have stopped us for sure. We placed confidence, I guess. We put our trust in our faith and we let the miracle in our lives. I have no other explanation. I did it in one breath and the miracles began to happen." At the present moment, 8 months have passed since the working through. 1 month ago, we visited a psychiatrist. She officially diagnosed Igor with psychospeech delay. 1 year ago, the same specialist, without hesitation, diagnosed him with autism. I was trying to prove her something, but she provided me a bunch of signs. And now, it was vice versa. She said, "Your son doesn't have mental defectiveness. He has development delay because of speech delay." That is, as far as his speech skills are developing, his psyche will also develop. Of course, my child has changed a lot, full range of changes. Good things are easy to get used to, and it is very difficult to tell now what it used to be and what it is now. His speech skills are developing. Just recently, he has begun to say "I." Before, he used to talk about himself in the third person, and now he says, "I have eaten, I am watching." He already identifies himself. What else? He has begun to watch cartoons. He has never watched cartoons before. I have been always worrying about this. How is that? He's a child and he doesn't watch cartoons. Even if he watched something, there were very quick videos where the pictures changes quickly. Usually it was commercials. He just needed movement. Now, when he watched them, he understands what they are about. He has begun to read. He reads the fairy tales by himself and he understands. Yes, he is not able to reproduce the story in details, but he can name the characters of the story at least, to tell who this story is about. His motor skills have also changed. He has finally understood what it is necessary to spin the pedals for. He used to ride the scooter, but he couldn't understand the bike. And this summer he learned to ride it. Now he is in this world. He understands. Yes, he is still like an alien. It is necessary to explain to him what is right and what is wrong, but he is already here with us. He is discovering this world. He is following the stages of the development. When I observe his way, I can say that he has passed 1.5 years of his development during these 8 months. When the child gets out of autism, the very first thing his psyche does, it reloads his software. The child relieves the experience of the previous years which he missed. In fact, his consciousness was absent during that time, and to move on, he needs to compensate for the information in his subconsciousness. And at the beginning, there is simply program download through copying method. And during this period, it is very important to love the child, to play with him. His parents mustn't drink, and so on. Because during this period, software debugging occurs exactly through copying method. Then there is the next step when the consciousness turns on and it is interested in playing this game. And the next step is when the child begins to collect information by himself. He begins to play, to manifest himself. This is what we noticed in Yegor's case. What do you think? How did this disease appear? I don't know how it appeared. There are a lot of reasons. Maybe it has really appeared because of my decision in the previous life. And it's more than likely that it has come from there. If you want, I can tell you why I turned to Natalia. I realize why I have chosen this way. There are a lot of psychologists now, a lot of awoken, enlightened, indigo. There are a lot of different names. And they all are talking about the right things. They all have very good programs, working methods which really help and work, but within this life. That is, you can correct what you have done, as it is said. You can change the consequence of your thoughts and actions by changing yourself in this world. In this world. Generally, it is like this. But this is my personal opinion. Somebody can disagree with this. But there are some moments, situations, diseases, including autism, the sources of which underlie not in this world, not in this life. But their roots are somewhere in the past, maybe 5, 10 lives ago. And no matter how hard I try to change myself, to reshape myself, I wouldn't be able to learn the reason of autism, to understand why my soul decided to live through such experience. And when I realized that Natalia and her team, that they had found the access to this information, I don't know how to say this in other words, that they were able to do this, then I rushed to catch this train. In my understanding, they provide the technical debugging of our psyche, if I may say so. So, I don't know the true reasons of autism. Yes, in our physical world it can be explained by vaccination, by some disease, by some stress. And if I wasn't in such a condition myself during the first 3 years of Yegor's life, maybe then I could have noticed better his behavior after the vaccination. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't even want to wonder what was the trigger for this disease. It has gone, and I have erased it from my life. Please try to recall the day when you received the video. Try to remember your feelings, your impressions. I remember that I sent the money, took the public transport, and Natalia wrote to me that they began to work. I came home and there was such a moment, I don't know what it really was. So I heard a phone call. I picked up the phone and I vanished. I remembered myself already in the other room. I tried to recall the events as I remember that I had a phone call. I took my phone, but I couldn't find the number in the call history. I was trying to remember who I had talked to, but I couldn't. It was a kind of amnesia, as if a little part of my life had been cut out. Then I contacted Natalia and she said, yes, we were working at that moment. I don't know what it was, but I didn't have any other strange feelings. Tell us, please, about the very first results which you have noticed. The very first thing which amazed me was the situation with the doors, when he began to pass them by. Because before it was like a nightmare. I couldn't take him anywhere. He saw only the doors. It seemed that in this world there were only the doors. If we didn't walk, we sat on the bench in front of our house and he played with the entrance door. Then he began to wake up. He began to notice the world around him. He saw the bugs who crawled. He saw the butterfly who flied. He stopped being afraid of pigeons. He used to be afraid of pigeons, and then he simply began to chase them and to feed and chase them. That was all. His fear was gone, and in general, a lot of his fears were gone. I remember such situation. He was sleeping in my bed. I woke up, but I was lying with my eyes closed. And I heard that Igor also woke up. He turned to me, saw me, leaned over me and kissed me right in my lips. And that was the moment when I realized that my child had woken up, that I wasn't just mom-dad for him, who just served him and gave him treats, that I became a real mommy for him, the dear person family. So that is how it goes. Step by step, there is something new every day. And I also noticed that now his self-development has turned on. That I don't have to repeat 10, 20 times the same actions for him. During these 6 years, I was persistently throwing a ball to him and he didn't catch it, he didn't understand. He couldn't throw the ball to me. And just recently, I saw him throwing up the ball. I took it and threw it to him and he caught it. Before, I was trying for 6 years. I took his hands and tried to throw it by his hands, but he didn't understand. And now, after watching the boys, as he used to stop and watch the other boys playing football or basketball, so due to watching the other boys, he learned to do this, like all the other children with ordinary development do this. What is going on in your family life now? Maybe you have noticed something new in Yegor's behavior. Maybe there is something that makes you happy or sad. A lot of things make me happy. His speech became spontaneous. For example, it was raining, we went out, and I said, "The cloud has gone, the rain has stopped." Yegor says, "I will call it back." His stereotypeness has gone. He has begun to understand how to use speech. Now he has a desire to use speech. And he didn't have this before. I had to pull every word of him. And now he wants to use speech. Yegor, what day of the week is it today? Tuesday. Right, yeah. And what day was it yesterday? Monday. And tomorrow it will be Wednesday. Right, yeah. And what month is it today? January. Right, yeah, January. And what is the season? Winter. Wow. And tell me, what is the name of your nursery teacher? Olga Igorevna. That's my boy. A lot of things make me happy. As I've said, there is a full range of changes, step by step. So it is difficult to say. If he used to have only one speech problem, then yes, but he used to have all kinds of problems, sensory, motor skills, a whole bunch of problems. I have studied a lot of stories of the children who are mentioned in the chart on the side. And I have also studied Tatiana and Yegor's story in details. She wrote that the doctor who examined Yegor 1 year ago and diagnosed him with autism, in a year he cancelled his diagnosis and left only psychospeech delay. And we really see a lot of changes here. We see the changes in speech understanding. He has less steaming now. His word stock has broadened. His motor skills got better. Tatiana didn't mention that Igor still has some problems with drawing. Yes, he still has some problems with graphic skills, but there is no need to despair. During my practice, I met some children who began to show up interest in drawing in 8-9 years, and they began to draw very conscious, nice, wonderful drawings. So in such situation, you need to support the child, to help him, to cheer him up. You can make it. Look how nice it is. Try to find some conscious objects, even among some scribbles. Ask the child, let's find an object here. What does it look like? What is this? Who is that? And so on. And the child becomes really motivated because he draws, he likes this, and he has a result. Now he is gradually recovering. What really bothers me is that he is picky about food. He still can't give up on his diet. That is, he has no interest to try some other food. But if this is something sweet, he will try. Share with us, please, your plans for future. I don't make any particular plans for future. Yegor will decide by himself what he wants in future. I will support any of his decisions. I just want to live a happy, joyful life without autism. I just want to have a happy life. And how does he communicate with his peers now? There is no a lot of communication yet, but this year he has entered a regular kindergarten, and I'm glad that he already observes and hears the other kids. He used not to notice them before, but I'm glad that he already outreaches to the other kids. He is attracted by kids. He watches them and he begins to contact. Maybe you have something to say to the other parents of such children. Some time ago, I arrived to the idea that everything we meet in this physical world, which we perceive as a visitation of God, as a divine retribution, as grief and happiness, in the divine world, all those things are grace of God for the souls. That is, living all this pain through, we become better, purer, we develop spiritually. And infodiving helps to get through this pain, through this lesson, 100 times quicker. In simple words, why should you ride on a cart if you can take a plane? If you have come across this video, maybe you don't know what is infodiving, but you will understand after a while. I don't still understand how it works. But when you go through, working through, when you feel it yourself, when you get help to learn your lesson, but you still understand and realize what is needed to be realized, and when you really become happy, then you will understand what infodiving is. All the information comes to our life for a reason. If you get this information, then you need it. Then in a while you will understand. If the universe, heaven, give you a chance to become happy, then use it. Very often people say now that a person comes to this life for love and happiness. And if I benefited from infodivers' assistance, I don't think that I broke the laws of the universe. as I have become happy. Thank you a lot. And happy next year, recovery year. Goodbye. All the best. Getting out of autism for a child during 6 months is gradually becoming normal. Before, while observing the children's result, the psychologist used to exclaim in surprise, "That's not possible in such a small period of time. It requires years of trainings." Now it is already becoming self-evident. Our method works, and these children are the best evidence for this.